Hey, this is Dave. I wanted to talk today about the IROC that's recently come out, and something that's pretty cool that it's done by a hobbyist in Sacramento here in the U.S., John, and he sent this sheet of decals, and as you can see, the decals have names and numbers, and it's kind of hard to see, but in white you can also see there are Camaro and Budweiser sponsor names or product names on the sheet as well. So really what you can do with this decal sheet, it's pretty cool, is you can customize the basic IROC, which was released this year. There's a red one, a blue one. I worked for Scalextric for 2 years, and during that time I got to work on liveries and for cars and research the liveries of the cars, but also the molds. And this was the first mold that was a suggestion that I had made for Scalextric in the 2 months that I worked for them. Well, to get a little bit into the process, when you look for a new mold to make, when you're deciding what mold's right for a certain market, you want a car that will work for a number of years. You want 5 to 6 different decorations out of one specific mold with no changes to that mold, unless you do shut-off molds at the time where you can change different aspects like the wheels or the hood or certain things that are interchangeable in a mold. So when you're working on a project, it's important to think about how many liveries can you get for one specific mold. It's something a lot of people don't think about. It's not really, their concern. But when you work for a company, and I had worked for 3, I had worked for Scalextric, Carrera before that, and initially years ago I worked for SCX, the Spanish Scalextric company. So like I said, this one was the first project that I had done where the idea for the mold was something that I had suggested. Initially what the discussions were, I really wanted the car to be as close to real as possible. So I really pushed, and the project team there, the two people that I worked with, really fantastic guys, and we all worked together to get the car right, and I think we collectively did a pretty good job. Overall I'm pretty happy with it. Anyway, one of the things I talked about, really wanted to get the Goodyear logo on the car. Really, absolutely had to get the Budweiser around the car on the front, on the back as well. You can see the logo is on the back. I'm shooting this with my GoPro, so it's going to be a little limited with the focus. I'm sorry. And on the sides and on the front, we really tried to get as much right on the car and avoid one specific thing. Names. Drivers' names are really, really difficult to get with a project like this. Generally speaking, you have to approach each driver if they're still alive, or the marketing team that represents them, or the families. That can be harder to track down than you'd think, and it can be quite expensive. So, what we talked about doing, what they ended up doing in the end, and I fully agreed with this, is leaving this area blank, where this is a model of an 86, the car that was raced in 86. Different years, they had slightly different bodies, obviously, but then different years, they also had a black field around the name, and then some of the other years, they didn't have a black field around the name. The one that I specifically wanted to do, just because I kind of liked it, and because I thought the name stood out nicely, was the one with the black field around the name, the black box. So I said, let's just leave that blank, and let's hope, because I knew there's a number of people that make decals around the country and around the world, really. Patos, I'm looking at you. And sure enough, within, you know, a few months of the car coming out, the first car coming out, which was the red one, the blue one should be out soon here in the U.S. This decal sheet showed up as an idea on Home Racing World. Go to homeracingworld.com, the best message board in the English language, in my humble opinion. Take that for what it's worth. So this is exactly what I had hoped would happen, and it did. Now, this guy, he did send me this decal sheet for free. I'm gonna be completely upfront about that. But I'm not working with him. I'm not being paid to do this. This is something that I feel strongly about because I still do feel strongly about the car. For too long, cars from the 80s have been ignored by the slot car companies, with good reason. The main market had been for slot cars. The most successful cars had been from the 60s and 70s, and really the 80s hadn't been touched for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is because the market was generally older. I'm 50 years old now, and the market is at least my age, if not a little older. So those people remember cars from the 60s and 70s mostly, and that's kind of where a lot of the market has been. And then it's been with modern cars. So cars, you know, that are kind of the era within a year or so, 2 years lag time, because it takes quite a long time to develop a slot car mold, believe it or not. At least 2 years, in my experience. I had hoped to push forward from the 60s and 70s into the 80s, getting cars that were fondly remembered by people kind of my age, Gen Xers, and, you know, cars from the 80s. So the IROC was kind of a first car. I had hoped to do Mustang as well, the Fox body Mustang. So, you know, who knows what's going to happen in the future. This car was kind of a first step. The plans I had asked for and hoped to accomplish were fairly simple with this car. This mold was the basis for a whole series of cars that were a series that every club, and I visited a lot of clubs here in the U.S., Germany, Spain, England, all clubs have, at some point in their racing season, have an IROC class. Why not actually make IROC cars? That was the idea. I thought because of the car's proportions, it's nice and low, it's nice and wide. They raced all Camaros, E28s, and there were a million different colors. So, to start with, red and blue. That was the idea. After that, and I'm not telling tales out of school here, because I still have to be careful with things that I'm saying about projects that are now not mine. My idea was hopefully to do lane colors. So red and blue to start, and then white, and then yellow, and then green, and then black, and then on and on and on. That was the start. So hopefully, I'm hoping that Scalextric continues with the project in general, and will do the idea of lane colors, because I think that's where the strength of this idea is to play into not only people that like the Camaro, that like the 80s, that remember the cars, that wanted them when they were in high school and college. I always wanted one. I could never get one. I had my first car was a 76 Camaro, blue one, and then after that I had a 79 Trans Am that I also did a version of when I worked for Carrera, the gold one, by the way. And I always wanted one of these, and when you're thinking about long-term plans for a mold, you have to really consider the longevity of a mold, how many years you can get out of that mold, and you know, if you do 2 to 3 of these a year, plus a white car, plus maybe let's call them tribute cars. There was a number of IROCs or a number of Z28s or Camaros that were raced at that time in the 80s on short track, as well as road racing. So there's a number of liveries that you could kind of appropriate to put on this body, and they would be close enough. Because, let's face it, these are just toys. It doesn't mean we don't have to take them seriously. It doesn't mean we don't have to have a passion about them, because I sure do. I'm the biggest rivet counter, pain in the ass person about getting things right, and I am. I know. I admit you can get things right, but then there's also room for a little creative interpretation and a little fun with these. One thing that this decal sheet, and I'm going to wrap this up here. This decal sheet will allow you to do. There are Camaro Z28. Let me get it right here. Wrong way. There we go. It says Camaro Z28 in black and in white. What that will allow you to do, and this is not casting aspersions on the job that was done, because I was one of the people that would sign off on the livery specifications. I was sent many PDFs, and you say, hey Dave, you know, check this to make sure it's right. I made some mistakes. I admit it. I'm sorry for that. There's a couple things that I should have caught and I didn't, and that's entirely my fault. The Camaro Z28 on the side here, it should be centered more on the door. The C should start about here and it should end about here, so it's fully on the door panel. Kind of hard to see. There we go. It should be fully on the door panel. It should not kind of cross the door panel there. That's my fault. I should have caught it. I just, you know, when you work on these kinds of projects, you make mistakes. The other one, and again, this is my fault. There should be a block off for an air duct right here on the front, and it should be black. On the real road cars, this was open, I believe. And on the race cars, I believe this was closed off, and it was just like a black plate or a black sticker. This decal sheet, and again, this is not, you know, making... I should have mentioned this, and maybe if this guy, if John does another run of these, he can include a little rectangle on there, a little black rectangle, so we can fix that, so we can fix the mistake that I made. So you can put a little black mark here, a little black square, a shutoff, and fix that, you know, small error. There are some other things, but I think in general, I'm really pretty pleased with the car. I hope it does well, and yeah, I think it's a cool car. And these decals were, I was really happy to see, especially as crisp. These were printed on an Alps printer, so an Alps printer can print white, and it can be the print is really crisp. The inking on these, and it's not going to pick it up on the GoPro, I'm sorry. I'm not really, this is not quality content, I know. These decals are as good as you could ever want. They are crisp. They appear to be really opaque. I haven't cut them yet because this is the sample, and I appreciate this, you know, more than I can say. After I left Scalextric, after I got let go, the car came out, and Scalextric USA sent me a car, sent me a sample, and I really appreciate that. So I don't want to touch this one. I'm probably going to buy another one and repaint it and use these decals because they're just fantastic. Anyway, so that's a little bit about the decals, a little more than a little bit, 16 minutes, sorry about the length. A little bit about the decals, a little bit about the project, and yeah, maybe this will be the first of many slot stories. Because thinking about it this morning, I guess I have quite a few of them, and maybe this can become a series. If you want to see me do this kind of thing more, where I talk about some of my thoughts about the cars or some of the projects, I have quite a few cars that here at my house that I've been involved with over the years that I worked, about 14 or so years for the 3 companies that I work for. So down in the comments down below, if you want to see more of these, leave me a comment. Subscribe, please, and click the little bell so you get some notifications if I upload a new video. And if you like it, please give it a thumbs up, because that helps YouTube pull the video up in the standings so people can see it a little more. Anyway, this is Dave Kennedy, and thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Bye for now.